Hello, everybody. This is Carol Maletta. Welcome to the Parenting 411 podcast, where we share information parents need from sources they can trust. We're joined today for an especially sensitive episode featuring a truly inspirational figure in the realm of workplace dynamics, advocacy, and personal growth. Bonnie Low-Kramen, a TEDx speaker and bestselling author, is no stranger to the limelight, having been the right hand to Oscar-winning actress Olympia Dukakis for a quarter of a century. But Bonnie's shine doesn't come merely from her association with Hollywood. Since 2010, she has been on a mission traversing 13 countries and 38 states, speaking and teaching about the pressing issues many face in the workplace today. A fierce advocate, Bonnie has dedicated herself to combating workplace bullying and tirelessly championing for closing the wage gap. Her literary contributions include Be the Ultimate Assistant and Staff Matters, essential reads for those who want to delve deeper into creating a positive work environment. Now, originally from New Jersey, Bonnie is based in sunny Florida, and today she brings her warmth and wisdom to our platform. Now, joining Bonnie, we have a special guest who provides a unique perspective on the broader impacts of bullying. Adam Kramen, Bonnie's son and a father of two young daughters aged 4 and 7 months. He's going to share his insights into the challenges and repercussions of being parented in a home affected by bullying. Together, Bonnie and Adam will shed light on the multidimensional aspects of this pressing issue, bridging the gap between professional and personal experiences. So welcome, Bonnie Low-Kramen and Adam Kramen. Thank you for joining me.
Thank you, Carol.
Thanks, Carol. Happy to be here.
Yes, thank you. Can you briefly describe, Bonnie, your journey and how you became an advocate against workplace bullying? Because you didn't start off there.
No, not at all. Thank you, Carol, for having us. This is such an important issue. In 2004, I began speaking publicly, and I would be teaching other executive assistants how to do their work better, faster, easier. I was asked to do this. And as I would be speaking, inevitably, I would be talking about the importance of speaking up and finding confidence to say what assistants see and hear, because they see and hear everything. And what started happening is that consistently, the assistants in my audience would come speak to me afterwards. And they would tell me their stories, and they would talk to me about how afraid they were to speak up, to say what was really on their minds. And why were they afraid to speak up? They were afraid of being fired. They were afraid of repercussions. And they started telling me their stories of bullying, their stories of bullying in the workplace, a myriad of behaviors, profanity, things thrown at them. Executives stomping around. And then I would also hear stories about their home life. It spills. It's not your work and your life. It's this together. And then I would start getting emails. The one that really sticks in my mind is the one that's in my book, Staff Matters, where the assistant said that bullying ruined her life. That her doctor was afraid that she was going to take her own life. And in fact, she was seriously considering that. And then compounded by the assistants who would say to me, Bonnie, I didn't realize I was being bullied until you explained what it is. And that's when advocacy began, because I thought this has become normalized. That this bullying, that we can be fooled into thinking that it's normal. And then I had to realize that was happening in my own home. So that began many years of rarely having a presentation where bullying is not present. I mean, I make it my point to talk about it pretty much every time I speak.
Well, in a little bit, we're going to talk a bit about your personal experience as well as Adam's. I do want to stick with this a little bit in the workplace because I'm wondering what patterns you're seeing, across various industries and cultures with workplace bullying, and especially today. You'd like to think we're more enlightened, but I don't know.
Yeah.
Sounds like you're still actively working, so we're clearly not.
Yeah. I mean, one of the misconceptions, well, the patterns that we're seeing is that, in this post-pandemic world with people working remotely and virtually, that workplace bullying is less now. And that's not true. It's actually worse because of the anxiety and the stress that people are under in this very volatile workplace. The other pattern is that leaders tend to look the other way in many cases of bullying, mainly because leaders in HR have never been formally trained about how to address it. It's a tough issue, which is why I wanted to do this podcast and why I wanted to involve my son, Adam. It's because it still is a subject that's not being discussed enough.
And what are the consequences of bullying being ignored in the workplace?
Well, that is a whole podcast of its own. The suffering, it's the trauma, it's the PTSD, it's the long-term trauma that happens as a result of bullying. I'll ask a room of assistants to raise their hand if they've ever witnessed or experienced it. And typically 75% of the room will raise their hand or more. And then I ask, do you remember what happened? And they remember it with minute detail. They remember what they were wearing. They remember what time of day it was. They remember what day of the week it was, even if it happened 15 years ago. And this includes sexual harassment. This includes, a lot of yelling and just many, many behaviors. And the trauma, I say, how long does this trauma last? How long? And they yell back at me, forever. It lasts forever. And that it is certainly not okay with me. And it cannot be okay with anybody. And I'm going to keep talking about it until we take a hack at it.
Right. And, what kinds of misconceptions do you think are out there about workplace bullying that you like to talk about when you go out and present?
Yeah. That leaders are addressing it and that companies are addressing it. The reality is that there are 0 federal laws against workplace bullying. There are plenty of laws about bullying in schools. There are no laws against bullying in the workplace. If policies exist, it is set down by the company themselves. There are federal laws against harassment, but that is mainly sexual harassment, and that's a great thing that there is. But it's not enough. So the misconception is that it's being handled, but the reality is it's not being handled, and it's being covered with a lot of silence because of the fear. And the reality is that women are the primary targets of bullying. Men are the primary perpetrators of bullying. And then inevitably I have both men and women say to me, but wait a minute, Bonnie, men can also be harassed and bullied, and women can also be big bullies also. We hear about mean girls and women on women bullying, and that absolutely exists. I'm not disputing it, but it's really it's a small percentage compared to the overwhelming way, the other way.
Right. And, I've also been speaking with educators recently, and a lot of them are not feeling that it's adequately addressed at the school level. K through 12 level either. And as I'm sure we're going to get into later, really that unchecked bullying behavior just follows into adulthood. You don't just automatically decide you're not going to bully anymore when you turn 21 or or something. So
that was the reality. That was the realization I came to eventually, and I'm sure we're going to talk about this, that bullying doesn't turn off. Like if a bully is a bully at home, they're also a bully at work, and vice versa. It doesn't stop.
Right. And let's get into that. Let's get into that, because you said that as a during the course of your speaking with assistants and presenting and just hearing all of this about bullying, it kind of was a realization for you that you were living in such an environment. So talk about that. When did you know that you were married to someone who bullied?
Yeah. Well, pretty early on in our marriage, my husband was working, and he would come home consistently and talk about his coworkers and managers and refer to them as they were incredibly stupid and they were morons and they didn't know anything. And he was the only one who knew the right way. How could everybody else be so stupid? And, the thing about the difference, many people say, well, how do you know what a bully is? Maybe it's just somebody having a bad day. The big test is frequency, is the consistency of that kind of language and the severity of it. And so, you're married to someone, you try to justify and explain it away, and like, okay, well, maybe they are just not the brightest folks that who you're working with. Right. But then there was a pattern. There's a pattern that develops that I saw, and I had to come to the indisputable realization that he was a bully at work. Because as I was trying to remember for this interview, he ended up getting fired at least twice. Because he told his manager that he was not smarter, but he was right about whatever it is that they were working on. And managers don't really like that kind of thing. Even if he was right, there's a way to do it. And there's some norms in the workplace that he was consistently choosing to do differently, to ignore, the way politics in the workplace go. And he really resisted all of that. So I knew pretty early on, when there was this consistent talking about other people as everybody else is stupid and moronic except for him.
Right. And when did you feel that, well, because you said that usually the bullying at work comes home. So when did you start to feel like, okay, maybe our environment, there's bullying happening here too?
Well, over time, I began to be critical of his characterizing other people as in this way, because I didn't experience people in the workplace like that. And I was a working person. I worked full time for all the time we were together, and I deal with a lot of people all the time. And, he would start bullying me. And, I worked for the actress Olympia Dukakis, and she became famous about a year into our work together. And I recall that even that, my husband would be critical of. He would say, well, everybody is smart around you because you work for a movie star. He would say that my experience was different than his experience, and so I couldn't possibly be right about people. And so, with some bullying relationships, the person being bullied can feel a bit gaslit. And,
Yes.
we know that phrase, gaslighting.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm admitting, looking back, that it felt a bit like that, like where I began to question my own ability to
Discern.
to discern qualities and personalities in people.
Mm-hmm.
But so I was bumping up against my own experience versus what the bully was telling me at home. And so he began bullying me. I became the moron and the stupid person, which is super painful when it's supposed to be somebody who's supposed to love you.
Right, right. And how did you know when the bullying started to affect your son, Adam, who's here with us? We'll be right back after this. If you're looking to reach a massive audience of parents and caregivers, then look no further than ProPix by the Parenting 411, the ultimate marketing program designed to skyrocket your brand to new heights. With ProPix, we've created 3 incredible packages to suit your marketing needs and budget. So let's take a look. First up is our social starter package. You'll receive a stunning graphic promo piece, plus we'll also feature your brand on the Parenting 411 Instagram page. It's the perfect way to make a memorable first impression and get parents buzzing about your business. Now, if you're ready to level up, our Parenting Pro package is where it's at. You'll enjoy all the benefits of the Social Starter package, plus more awesome benefits, including exposure on the Parenting 411 podcast, which reaches parents in more than 22 countries each week. But wait, there's more. For those seeking the pinnacle of marketing power, our Elite Exposure package is the way to go. You'll get even more exposure across our platform, including thousands of followers and connections on LinkedIn. Get ready to dominate the airwaves and establish yourself as the go-to resource for families everywhere. Take advantage of ProPix by the Parenting 411 today and unlock unparalleled marketing opportunities for your business. But I should tell you that prices are set to increase on November 1st, so act now. ProPix by the Parenting 411 is your passport to the hearts and minds of parents. Visit ProPixbyP411.com. Join us today and watch the magic happen. And we're back with the Parenting 411.
Well, that was probably one of the most painful things to realize, because for the longest time, I didn't really know that it was happening. I knew that I was being bullied, but Adam and my husband were kind of inseparable. They seemed that way, and they seemed like they were best buddies and good friends, and they had sports in common. And my husband would tell me things like, well, you don't understand boys because you're not a boy. So, and you didn't have a brother. So I know everything about raising a boy. You know nothing about raising a boy. And I didn't know. And I really feel that I didn't really know the extent to which my husband was bullying Adam until my husband's words started coming out of Adam. And that I started seeing things that Adam was not happy with how things were going all the time, and then now, of course, I realized that he was so young that he was being manipulated. And if I had an opportunity to do over, which is why I'm speaking about it now, is I would have raised a much bigger conflict way sooner than I did. But, I bought into, well, I know more about raising a boy than you do and all that. And I thought, well, maybe you do. And Adam, I just was determined that I knew the marriage was not good, but I was going to stay in that house. I wasn't going to leave Adam in that house alone with him, with the bully. I thought, well, if I leave, then I can't possibly protect him when things go bad.
Right, right. And
I know Adam has his point of view on this.
Oh, right. I'm just getting ready to ask him right now. But I was also thinking about something that you said, and I wonder if you also, when you weren't quite aware that bullying was happening with Adam, you were kind of buying into the, well, I'm a woman. He needs his father's influence. So even if you felt bullied, maybe you thought it was good for him to be around a man, be around his father. I was just wondering if that was true too.
Well, I knew enough to know that children need two parents, they're ideally, if possible. And I knew enough divorced people that that was always, it felt really hard. And it was feeling hard enough being together. And, Adam and I have memories of, a lot of yelling and then when we would be in front of people, we would behave, like right. We would act, we would pretend that things were okay. And that feels schizophrenic. Like that feels so wrong.
Right. Well, let's have Adam jump in here. I want to ask, if you can describe what it is like growing up in a household where one parent is a bully, for someone listening and trying to figure out.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's interesting hearing all of this back again and kind of working through all of this. My mom and I have definitely done a lot of work in this space. Thinking about it, I mean, even the story about him and with work and those dynamics for him, like I was taught an incorrect version of how people engage with each other, about how friendships work, how family dynamics should work, how you handle your feelings and how you share your feelings with others. I was given a manual by somebody who didn't know what they were talking about. And my mom was right. We were very, very close. And so knowing that I was being bullied, I wouldn't have been able to articulate it like that then. The way it felt was very confusing. I didn't know what every day would look like. There wasn't a whole lot of consistency. And so frenetic is a great word. Dealing with a bully, you become very attuned to everything, how they walk up steps, how they open a refrigerator, how anything. I mean, it's that's part of my superpowers. I'm a salesperson today. And so picking up cues with people and kind of how they engage, that was survival for me. Because to live with a bully it's figuring out where they are and then meeting them in that place and not really having any sort of connection about how you feel about something really just connecting with your feelings, because that doesn't matter, because most of the time those are going to probably come in conflict with the bully because they really struggle with that emotional regulation. All of that controlling of the other people is just them trying to control the environment. So confusing and very difficult.
Were there any aspects that were particularly challenging or, that you think had an effect on how you operate today as a man?
Absolutely. I think one about connecting to those emotions is one thing that I still struggle with today. In understanding kind of actually how I'm feeling and processing it and actually moving through it. I was an all-state baseball player. That was one of the things that how my dad and I connected. When we would go to baseball games, I remember distinctly not wanting to find the field. He would drive me, and heart would be pounding, as I typically do, and not wanting to find the field. And I mean, I think I know why now. If I did poorly, I was essentially loved less in my home. I was not a fun ride home, and my home life was impacted by my performance as a 12-year-old on a baseball field. And so those experiences of, I can think back and know how I was feeling, but I knew that there was no way to share. To say that I was nervous or anxious, or that's not allowed, because subconsciously I knew he wasn't able to handle that on his plate. So if I'm putting that on his plate, all that was ever met with was yelling, a lot of yelling to really just nip that in the bud. So that hyper sensitivity to people, and just that disconnection from how you feel on things, because the bully really dictates how things go and the temperature of the room.
And so, for Bonnie, how did you manage your professional work while dealing with such a personal issue at home then?
Well, work for me was where I felt safe and I felt normal. I felt like, people respected me there and liked me there, and I had fun there. And the people in my orbit, when you're in show business, it was high pressure and a lot of work, but it was a lot of fun also. And I tried very hard to bring the two together. Adam, you remember, the movie screenings that we had in New York City. And, we had a couple of times that were really, really fun. I would get perks as part of my job. But I remember that, one instance that Adam and I were recalling was that I was starting to get paid for speaking engagements, so this was my work. And I remember getting paid $500. My very first check came in the mail for $500 for a speech I gave. And I brought it home, and over dinner, I made a big deal about saying, hey guys, I made this money and I want to buy us a new television for the family room. I want to do that. And Adam was so excited. And my husband was less excited. He was like, why do we need that? And he was not happy about it. But I plowed through, and I said, well, Adam and I can go this weekend. We'll take the car and we'll go to the store, and Adam will help me pick out the TV, and we'll measure so we get the table. And, I was trying to anticipate any possible obstacle. I didn't think that my husband would come with us. I just wanted something to be joyful. The thing about bullies is they make a positive situation often negative. And the buying of the television set was something that was just a really positive thing. It wasn't that we were spending a crazy amount of money or anything. So on the weekend, my husband chose to go with us to the television store, to the appliance store, most people would know. And Adam and I were looking at televisions, and my husband chose to come with us, but he sat in a chair across the room alone, like with a scowl on his face and clearly super unhappy that this was happening. And Adam and I wanted so much for this to be a positive experience for Adam that I tried very hard to ignore that. And that's what targets of bullying do. We work around it. And it was a miserable ride home. We did buy the television, and Adam and I did go pick it up, but there was hell to pay.
Well,
I mean, Adam,
actually,
what do
we
you remember?
yeah, well, we didn't buy the TV initially. He typically what he would do if he didn't like where he was, he would make it
Mhm.
so miserable that we had to leave. So we didn't
Okay.
actually pick out the TV. We had to go actually take him home, and
Okay.
then we went back and picked out the television without him because that was the only way to really get at that situation. To actually having to remove him from the situation, pretty amazing.
Mm,
And
mm,
so it was a positive thing. And I did not anticipate the negative reaction. And so I can totally understand how Adam would be, like trying to make sense of, here, my way of operating compared to his father. That has to feel that's why when I talk with parents and any parent listening to this, you want as hard as you can to be on the same page.
mhm,
Two parents be on the same page with their kid because they don't know how to make sense of this. I
mhm,
barely knew how to make sense of it. And
mhm,
it's a vivid, never to be forgotten memory.
mhm, mhm.
And every time we used that TV, I thought of it. I don't know about you, Adam, but I did.
Mm. So, as you mentioned parents, so what do you think are good options for dealing with when you have a parenting partner who's a bully in the house? I mean, short of, I guess, leaving, what are some tips or yeah, I usually think of tips as being positive, but
Yeah.
some strategies, I guess, to navigate that.
And I mean, I'll answer, and then I'd love for Adam to answer this one too.
Sure.
I mean, my way was I admit now I was arrogant. I thought, well, the power of my positive personality will change my husband. And so I would try reasoning and I would
Mhm.
try as, I fancy myself intelligent. And I tried, uh, rationalizing and using logic about the problem. And when that didn't work, I'm open to therapy, and we got counseling. So that's another, how do you deal with a bully parent is
Mhm.
counseling. Let's go to somebody who's smarter than me. If I'm a moron, if I'm stupid and we're going to stay married, let's go to counseling. Let's go to somebody we respect. And,
Mhm.
and, and we did.
As a family, you all did the three?
No,
Oh, okay.
my husband and I, in order
Okay.
to try to get to solid ground,
Mhm.
a common ground.
Sure.
And over time, I realized I was dealing with a very extreme personality.
Mhm.
I would hope that other couples would have better success with counseling and with education. Education is key here, Carol, to answer your question. I
Mhm.
needed to educate myself a lot quicker and a lot faster, sooner about bullying. So, and then, and then it's about like not tolerating
Mhm.
bad behavior. I cannot, like in the workplace, I'm accusing leaders in HR of looking the other way. Well, I looked the other way too
Mhm.
often because I fooled myself into thinking it was okay. Um, Adam, what do you think?
Like, I can't really talk about dealing with a partner. I can kind of give advice for what it would be for a child in that space.
Mhm.
I wish what I had at that time was very much I mean, I have a therapist now. Wish I had a therapist then. A third party, someone who's not emotionally invested in the outcome, because I think that's really hard as a kid. It's either
Mhm.
your friends where there's major judgments, or there's school officials. There's implications on what you say and the feelings that you have, and
Mhm.
there doesn't feel like there's that freedom. And when in your home and you don't feel like you have that freedom, it's only happened in the last several years where I've been able to start really sharing how I feel. And
Mhm.
so being able to have that outlet is incredibly important. So I love that there's a great deal of online resources for support, and I mean, thank goodness for the internet for certain things, and I think that's one of them. And so, as a kid, finding what that place is to connect to those feelings, because I think there's a lot of what you deal with is disconnecting from them to keep yourself safe. I think there's a major job is done to do that, and prioritizing that.
And because, as we've talked about, how there's just this connection between being a bully at home and then where you work. What are some proactive steps that employers and colleagues can do to prevent workplace bullying? And what do you think?
Yeah, well, without actual laws in place, then it is up to company leaders to address this issue. And I've spoken at HR conferences, and I've asked rooms of HR people and say things like, so who teaches you to do a bullying investigation? How does that go down in the workplace? And they laugh and they say, oh, Bonnie, nobody teaches us. We just hope somebody else has done one before. So the answer to your question is leaders need to make a decision to be overt and transparent about their stand on workplace bullying. And that means putting language on the website, putting language on job descriptions to talk about a culture of respect. There's a job posting that got a lot of attention recently, which had a line that said, we are committed to a no drama workplace. And I can tell you that a lot of people reading that line interpret that to mean, oh, they don't put up with workplace bullying. And to make the policies about bullying and sexual harassment known, transparent, so it's not a mystery and this big secret, this big, forbidden secret to talk about, because there's a lot of shame that's involved when someone is a target of these behaviors. People wonder, like, is it me? And what am I doing wrong? What am I doing to bring this upon myself? And without support, there needs to be overt support for this issue in the workplace. So that's how leaders can proactively get ahead of this, by making it known there is a zero tolerance policy for these behaviors in the workplace. Adam, do you have something about that?
No, that's your area of expertise. Try not to wade in those waters.
That absolutely is very important. And as adults, we spend a large part of our time at work. And so it's important that it not be allowed there. And it may even, perhaps even, bring awareness to even people who bully to check their behavior in other arenas too, when their employer is serious about it.
Right. And that's the thing. Assistants will tell me things like, well, Bonnie, it's the CEO who's the bully, or the head of HR who's the bully, and they're not going to do anything about it. So there's a disconnect between, sometimes policies exist, but is anybody actually enforcing the policy? The reality is that bullies behave the way they do out of fear. They also suffer from the imposter syndrome. They suffer from insecurity. They have fear about, are they capable and competent? And are they surrounded by people who are smarter than them? So even managers and executives, I understand the why of it. Like, why are they the way they are? But it does not excuse the behavior. The workplace is no place for this. And it's oftentimes about power and wanting to feel powerful. That there's a mindset that sometimes leaders believe that if they manage others by intimidation, that it makes them come across as powerful and strong. And the reality is quite the opposite. I mean, and it crosses over. The bully who is intimidating their assistant at the office or their colleague, their fellow, staffer, they tend to bring it home and want to exert power in the work, in the home. And, that happened to Adam and me. My husband would set down policies at home. Adam and I were remembering, he would put down rules, meaning if I worked in New York City and we lived in New Jersey, and if I wasn't home when dinner was put on the table, they ate without me. So it was a rule. You either get there on time or things happen without you. And one night, you get to your breaking point sometimes. And one evening, Adam was 13. He was studying for his bar mitzvah, and he was involved in a baseball league. It was baseball or basketball, Adam?
Baseball.
It was baseball. And so he was very busy, between school and the baseball league and studying for his bar mitzvah, which was going to happen in May. And over dinner, I arrived as quick as I could. I sat down, and it was announced to me that they signed that my husband signed Adam up for a second baseball league right then. And I was not involved in the decision as his parent. And we had a glass kitchen table, and I took a glass dinner plate, and fortunately there was a rubber plastic, placemat, which the table didn't break, but it could have. And I was so frustrated over this that, the rule was you weren't here when the decision was made, so you're not in on it. And I broke the plate, and I realized I scared Adam, because my husband prided himself on, there was no hitting in our house, lots of yelling, but no hitting. And psychologists will say that, psychological abuse is even sometimes worse than physical abuse. So Adam, I'm pretty sure you still did the second league, right? Did you? Yeah. So it happened. It's power. It's about power and impact. He chose to have impact where he could. We tend to choose where we exert our behavior, and that, and it was in our house that happened.
We'll be right back after this. Are you a parent looking to unlock your potential in raising confident, capable, and courageous children? Well, look no further. Join us at the upcoming Parent and Purpose Summit Back to School Edition, where parenting experts from around the world will come together to share their wisdom and insights. I'm Carol Maletta, founder of the Parenting 411. This summit is your opportunity to gain essential skills and tools to become the parent you've always aspired to be. Over 5 incredible days, we'll dive deep into topics like positive discipline, effective communication, mental health, self-care, school readiness, and more. An attendee from our last summit told us, "This summit changed my parenting game. I feel more confident and connected with my children than ever before." So secure your seat at the Parent and Purpose Summit today. Visit parentandpurposesummit2023.com. That's parentandpurposesummit2023.com. And click the registration button to join us on this transformative journey. The Parent and Purpose Summit, where intentional parenting begins. And we're back with the Parenting 411. So, looking back, are there things that you wish that people around you might have noticed or done differently to help in some way? Adam, you're nodding your head.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, I think there's a part of people where I think they just they want to give that space. I think there's a somewhat of a taboo of connecting with people and actually talking about something that's real. I mean, I think there's even within my family, right? I think there's a level of authenticity that I think is required that I don't think people typically get, and that I really wish there was that open line of communication. I mean, I think there was some cries for help through those years, and the way that I would dissociate. I mean, the way that I would kind of go off on my own when I got into drug use later on in dealing with this sort of stuff. There's a challenge there that comes. That I guess you don't really have that autonomy as someone who kind of was working in that bullying atmosphere. It takes away kind of that autonomy, kind of some of that executive function, because you've never really self-motivated. So, or been driven by that. You're driven by the kind of the fear of the bully and not disappointing him, and what the repercussions of that are. So I think what I wish was there was just somebody who would really listen and not necessarily be invested in the outcome. That would have made all the difference. Really would.
And so, as you have moved farther and farther away from that time in your life, would you say that your relationship with your mother has helped in your healing process? And
yeah, I mean, look, she's been a mirror for me. I mean, I think as a kid, I guess as an adult, you don't necessarily trust the memory of your childhood in a lot of ways, or at least for me, it's hard for me to trust what happened because it was so extreme. As I see it now as an adult, as a parent, what happened in my home was pretty awful. If you're kind of looking at anything outside of like sexual, physical abuse, we talked about psychological abuse and kind of how it, where it sits. But there's with my mom, she's been a great resource to understand a little bit more about what happened, and also to deal with some of the things that I'm still working with today. I know that her work was a safe place for her, but 10-year-old Adam only saw that as my mom's not here, and I'm here with somebody who's scaring me immensely. I can't process that she's going to keep herself safe and that she's going to find a place for her to build up her self-confidence. I couldn't conceptualize that as an adult. Now I can see it. So as a resource now, as a parent, I'm able to see what happened so much more. So it's not just dealing with what happened, it's the impact on how I show up as a dad today, how I show up to work today. I mean, I said it impacted every component of how I interact with people. The last 5 to 6 years has been pretty transformational for me, of seeing some pretty broken patterns, and really having to do a lot of rebuilding. And so she's been a great resource through that time for us to, kind of work through that stuff together.
That's great. And I'm wondering, now that you have 2 daughters of your own, how is that shaping your parenting, and how are you teaching them how to be self-advocates and to, expect respect and to stand up to bullying if they were ever to encounter it?
it is paramount when I think about the autonomy that my daughters will feel about their feelings.
Okay.
I see so many parents. It's a strong arm tactic. It really is a lot of the time. It could come out of naivete, or it's just lack of patience, or some other things that are going on. It all comes down to emotional regulation. But there's a point where children very young need to understand that they have choices and that you can have feelings about things. And that, I'm 35 years old and have challenges, emotional regulation. What are my expectations for my kid, and how they are the best barometer, up and down and up, because they are truly feeling with every way and how everything is going. So when I think about how I engage with my daughters, feeling like they have room, that this is their life, right? That was flipped for me. It was my dad's world and I was living in it. And that's kind of how that worked. My daughters are going to see that differently. And that's kind of a priority for me.
And so, do you have any advice or any insights that you'd offer for young people who are experiencing similar dynamics to what you grew up in?
Yeah, I think just kind of first to the therapist, or finding someone to talk to. I think that's paramount. I don't think that there is any negatives that come along with it. And there's just a critical need. I would say it's hard for me to give advice for children dealing with it, because frankly, I dealt with it pretty awful. Or not in the most productive of ways. I was so I think I would go to advice for parents who are now parents who dealt with bullying when they were a kid. I think it would be, I think for that, there needs to be a concerted effort on someone's part to prioritize emotional regulation. I think it's our number one goal, not only as parents, but as people on the earth. I think it's the ultimate goal in being able to, we can't boil the ocean. We just deal with what it is, and how do you engage with the world, and how healthily do you do that? And so I think advice for parents, whatever that looks like, for how you can connect with your emotions. I've experimented in so many different ways, trying to find that connection, and being able to process. It all just gets stuck. I still deal with it now. I've read a book that I love, The Body Keeps Score. Trauma is stored in your body. I love it. Trauma is stored in your body. It's incredible. I deal with it now. I mean, I'm 35 and I deal with stuff in my hips and my back and my shoulders, and it's all very tied. So acknowledging what happened, being a parent, acknowledging what happened and taking ownership of it. I think that was what I struggled with for a long time. And that's why I used outside things to change how I felt, because I just didn't have the facilities to deal with it, like my dad. I learned, that's what I learned most of all, of how to disconnect to that.
Did you have anything to say, Bonnie?
Yeah, oh boy. I am always eager to be honest with Adam about what happened in order to help him heal now and into the future. I'm aware that he is still, struggling with coming to peace with what happened. And therefore, I think talking about it with you, Carol, together could help other parents if they actually see living, breathing examples of a young man who, if they have a 10-year-old at home and it's happening, that maybe it can be dealt with right now. I know, in my stage of the career, my way of helping others is to discuss it openly in the workplace, and to hear the stories and to put them in my books and articles, so that this issue is no longer covered with silence, because silence doesn't solve it. Adam and I lived that, where we lived through times of a lot of yelling, and then that turned into like lots and lots and lots of silence, uncomfortable silence, right, Adam?
Yep.
And it's painful and it's traumatizing. And I know what it did to me as an adult, and looking back, I wish I had acted much sooner on Adam's behalf, and gotten more education. And I find myself hearing what Adam's saying and wondering, would your dad have permitted you to get therapy? I can't even imagine what that conversation might have been. Can you?
No, I think there's a very closed offness to the world. I think any sort of self-discovery or vulnerability was not really allowed. Saying that you're struggling or that things aren't perfect was not permitted, not okay.
Well, one thing. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
If there's any lesson here, I mean, that was awesome, Adam, that you don't have to be perfect, that none of us can be. But it would be important to discuss authentically what's going on, because to pretend, we lived for so many years with the pretending that things are okay when things were so not okay, and that we pay a big price for that. And so please, please, please get the help you need if you're living in that.
And that's something that I'm really hoping that people listening to this, they really hear. I mean, you all have been, very authentic and sharing your experience. And I find sometimes, and I'll just in particular say moms, I know that the bullying can go either way with mom or dad or whatever, but thinking as a mom, a lot of times we will overlook the impact for ourselves or whatever, but your child, you'll take action when it's something that involves your child. And so, maybe someone listening who's kind of ignored the way they've been treated, but if they consider, because hearing Adam talk about his perspective, how he saw things, through his 12 and 13-year-old eyes, if not for themselves, they will seek the help or make the big decision that they might need to make for the sake of their children.
Yeah, it's dangerous. Bullying is dangerous. And we pay just a huge price for it. So the danger is real.
Right. Yes. And on the work front, do you have any closing points that you want to make in terms of that? Of what should be done there?
I do. To the staff of the world, I say, have your voice heard, that it's important to speak up, because what we have seen, what the data shows, is that if a bully is bullying one person, the chances are very good they're bullying more than one person. So you're probably not alone, unfortunately. And the only thing that is going to make things better is, it's going to be messy, but it's going to be, one person can be dismissed, but several people, 5 people signing their name to a letter to bring something to, with actual names, bringing it to the CEO's attention, cannot be ignored. And it's awareness and coaching and accountability. It's not a mystery here. So step 1 is awareness, and that means we cannot be silent. We cannot be complicit and look the other way because it's uncomfortable to deal with. I promise you, it is far more uncomfortable to deal with the long-term impact of these behaviors.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
That's what I would say. Speak up, stand up, show up, and speak up.
Mm-hmm. Thank you for that. What's next in your anti-bullying mission?
Well, I am. My 2 books are out: Be the Ultimate Assistant and Staff Matters, and both of them have significant pieces in them about workplace bullying and the dark side of the workplace. And I do tie it to personal bullying as well. Young bullies grow up to be big bullies unless the cycle is broken. And there's a lot of damage done to young people, and it can be healed. So that's my mission in the work, whatever time I have left to do the work I'm doing. I'm speaking openly about these challenges in the workplace. It's not only the right thing to do to not treat people with, mean spirit and intimidation, but it's actually very smart to do that. Healthy cultures of respect are more productive, have higher retention, and are more profitable. The data is clear. Companies will make a whole lot more money if the people who populate those companies are treated with respect. And that shouldn't be as hard as it is. But the current environment we're in, which is so stressful and filled with anxiety, causes people to act out.
Right.
When you pair that with whatever damage was done to them as children and young people that is unresolved because of, people who are looking the other way or not willing to have authentic conversations, as Adam was talking about, then we're going to have problems when, as people grow older and then they manage people, in the workplace, and, that therein lies some very big problems. Yes. So I'm just going to continue doing this work, collaborating with HR professionals and leaders and assistants and recruiters to address these issues head on.
Well, I'm so glad you are. It's very much needed. How can we follow your work?
My website is my name, BonnieLow-Kramen.com. And I'm very active on LinkedIn. I write. I'm a writer first and foremost, besides being Adam's mom and grandmom to his beautiful daughters. I'm a writer, and I write a great deal. And so LinkedIn is a great place to find me. And I, going into companies and speaking on podcasts like this and webinars. So all of it is about offering information that people can use to make their lives better.
Well, thank you so much, Bonnie. And thank you, Adam, so much for joining me for this conversation. It's just, we're kind of winding down with Bullying Prevention Month, but it continues. I mean, the quest continues to eradicate bullying. And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. And as I implore you every time, please like, share, and subscribe to the podcast, but share this episode. Please share this episode. There's just so many gems that are shared here that I think families need to be aware of. And always remember that it's never too late to be the parent that you want to be. Thanks for listening, and I'll talk to you next time.